I'm afraid I dream too big. So I had a lot of big dreams, but I didn't know if those were possible or feasible when it came into the real world. Everything in my life, I like to get into that uncomfortable zone because that's when I can see what I'm really capable of. Welcome back to the Journey Podcast. I'm your co-host, Emma Jackson.
And I'm Jose.
And today we're going to be diving into the entrepreneurial mindset, the things that come from the inside out that make you a better business owner, a better entrepreneur, and that help us succeed.
Yeah, I honestly want to talk about motivation first.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like if you don't have motivation as an entrepreneur, you're not gonna be successful.
Intrinsic motivation, where it comes from the inside out, right? Where you just genuinely enjoy it for the task's sake. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you have no idea. It's not like someone's waiting to give you a trophy, right?
Not at all.
Or a raise. You have to put that work in yourself.
Yeah. So I want to know a little bit more about you. I know we've been working together for a very long time, right?
Uh-huh.
But I want to actually dive into your background because my story is a little bit similar to yours, but very different.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Okay, I know your dad passed away, and then you had to come back to the business. And when you came back to the business, you didn't take a paycheck. You guys were losing money. What kept you going? What was your motivation to keep going through those very difficult first couple of years?
Yeah, so...
Because to me, I want to know what kind of person you are, like in that aspect.
I didn't have a frame of reference. It just felt like the right thing to do because I believed in the vision of the company and I knew what I was capable of.
What was the vision of the company?
At that point, it was, how can I continue my dad's legacy of this great marketing firm, but do it through the skills that I knew I could do?
Because your dad was like the main creator.
Yeah, and he was brilliant, but I didn't have his 40 years plus of pedigree behind me. I just had a really good vision for making clients' dreams come true, building what they wanted. They didn't even have the words to describe, and I know that I could make their vision a reality. I just had to figure out a way to do that with the skills that I had. And to me, I was so sure that we could find success in that it was worth it to me to invest in our employees and the structure that we had there and go get a side job for myself and go get, because I knew I can take on the work until it gets to a point where I need to be full time. And then that's exactly what happened. About a year in, it was like, this is unsustainable. I absolutely have to come in full time. And then I made that decision to, take on, but it was never about the money for me. I always knew that money would come if I was able to pursue my passion to the fullest.
So what motivates you essentially was passion.
Number one? 100%.
Yeah, so basically it's like I'm gonna tell you my story a little bit, but what I'm hearing from you is you wanted to do justice by your father's legacy and make sure you carry the legacy forward.
But I wasn't a copy of him, so I had to do it in my way.
Yeah. For me, you remember a couple episodes ago where we had Akio on the show and he was talking about burnout?
Yeah.
To me, I think my motivation when it came into the business route, I was always in the underdog, so I wanted to prove people wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that caused a lot of different issues for me with burnout in a sense, but my major motivation through everything I've done is to try to be the best version of myself possible. And by proxy, that means I'm the one educating myself in the dark rooms, in the middle of nights, coming back into the office, then leading the team. All right, this is what I learned. This is how we're going to do these things. My motivation for being an entrepreneur is that will to be the better version of myself. Be whatever projects come to my table, that project is going to teach me something new.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of keeping that forward. Let me ask you this question. Motivation has to equal growth, right? You have to have the motivation to get to the finish line, but you have to envision the finish line to keep the motivation alive. What's the growth? What's your growth mindset?
Okay, that's another part of the entrepreneurial mindset is that, the growth mindset. I guess I've always been very, very, very ambitious, and I hate complacency. As in, I get to a plateau, and I'm like, what's next? And that's actually, we also had an interview with Kim Roxy of Lamique Beauty, and she said the same thing. She was like, I'm just not content. When I hit a plateau, I'm like, what's next? What can I do? And
she's funny. She's like, I had to put myself in an uncomfortable situation, and I don't like being in uncomfortable situations.
I know, but I'm the same way. I will specifically, with everything in my life, I like to get into that uncomfortable zone because that's when I can see what I'm really capable of. And that's exciting for me because I don't know, there's so much I want to do. And I've realized that if that at the end of the day, we are the ones stopping us from doing those things. I remember, okay, this is a huge throwback, but it was super impactful and I lose it sometimes as an adult. But when I was in high school, I was in this nerdy political club
You
and
nerdy?
yes, and it was amazing. It was called Junior Statesmen of America. It's JSA. It's still a really great organization in the US. And I was the national director of public relations. And I remember thinking, why don't young people have a voice in the White House? Because so many of these big decisions and discussions are happening and they're excluding the youth, which are going to be the future of America. And so I was like, I'm going to call the White House. And everyone was like, that's a terrible idea. That why would you do that? And I just Googled the White House phone number. I had a teacher who had a son whose wife worked in some area of the White House. I had a name basically. I had one name that I could drop. And so I just Googled, I called, and I just, with utter confidence, was like, the youth voices need to be heard. Here's my role. Here's my position. How are we going to make this happen? And I did kind of think that it was going to go off into nothingness, but I at least put myself out there. And I think it's so much harder to do that as an adult. It's scary to put yourself out there because you're like, who's going to listen? But I have to remember that people do listen and opportunities present themselves if you put yourself in that space. That phone call that I thought was going to turn into nothing got me an invite to the White House Youth Summit and into a room of 100 people, of way more influential people than I was. And I was 16 and I was in a room of 100 of the most successful, you know, entrepreneurs, young people doing great things in the space. And I got front row seats to Barack Obama and this like select group of people that were running the government at the time. And I never, ever, ever would have dreamed that a small town girl from Kentucky with no connections to that world would ever have been there. And it was because I had the balls to call them. And as an adult and as a business owner, I still find myself being like, oh, I'm not qualified to be in that space, or we're not good enough yet. And it's like, if high school Emma could do that and was so fearless, why can't the adult version do the same thing? I don't know if that answers your question, but
That makes sense. I mean, I think my question was more towards like, did you have like a plan? Like, what was the growth plan for the company to motivate you? I like how you tied
well,
it.
the growth, I think it's that I sometimes I'm afraid I dream too big. So I had a lot of big dreams, but I didn't know if those were possible or feasible when it came into the real world. And over the years, I've learned that that's honestly crap and that you can dream as big as you want. And in fact, if you start with the most unrealistic dream you can think about, then you start working down to how that could be possible. And that's how you find your next step. So that's the growth mindset for me. And it's changed over the years, depending on what I'm interested in, depending on what I've learned and how I want my life to go. That's how our vision for the Idea Farm has formed, especially now that I have a business partner in you and we are working through that joint vision together. What did that growth mindset look like for you? Is it something you've always had?
Yeah, so for me, it's always like as a young kid, you always tell your mom, when I'm a millionaire, I'm gonna buy your house. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was like my first vision was like, how do I make money? I know being an employee is not gonna give me money. I done that for in my early 20s when I was still starting up my first couple companies. You know what I'm saying? Um, and my motivation at the end of the day is to create a family house, a family business that is generational wealth. Um, in in the course of that major vision, there's smaller visions. Like, I want to develop a very strong podcast with you. I want to develop a very strong barbershop. Smaller little goals that help motivate and feed the bigger goal
Yeah.
and keep my motivation alive. I feel like it's not like a short sprint run. It's more of a marathon, but that marathon has to have checkpoints that reignite me, remotivate me, put me out there. I'm not really good at vacation kind of guy. Like, yeah, I'm gonna take a vacation to Hawaii to like rebalance myself, get in the zone. My zone is like, yo, I hit X amount of money in this company, or we hit this goal, we had this sponsorship deal, we got X, Y, and Z. That motivates me. That gives me more energy. You have seen the negative side of that where I crashed for like 2 3 days because I just overworked myself. But that's what I was kind of going with in that direction with you. I was very curious to understand like
Gotcha.
what was the motivation you had to keep you going to your objective?
Okay, well, I think it's a good idea to share what that objective has always been for me, which is quite simply to truly do work that makes an impact on the world, makes a positive impact on the world. That can mean a ton of different things. But when I was in New York City before my dad passed away and I took over the Idea Farm, I was introduced to the idea of I was always in the nonprofit space, okay, or the policy space, and I was going to do good that way. And I got really bogged down with the bureaucracy, and I'm a very action oriented. I want to go quick and fast, and that doesn't happen in government and nonprofit a lot of the time. But I was introduced to the idea of do good, make money. That you could do good and also make money as a private business. Those oftentimes come across as B Corps, right? Or any sort of conscious corporation business where sustainability or giving back truly is a part of their business plan, and it is done so in a very substantial way. That interested me. That I was like, that right there, if I can find a way to genuinely do good and make money, I'm in for it.
And this is before you came back to your family's house.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking about that and contemplating my next move, and I actually had called my dad the week that he passed away. I called him and I said, could I come back for the summer? I want to learn from you. I don't know what I want to do yet, but I think I may want to work for myself, and I think I have a lot to learn. So, in a way, I guess I did.
And it hasn't been easy, the road that you've been on, but I don't know. I think you should take pride in what we've accomplished, and hopefully we were doing your dad justice. I know we're doing my mom and my dad justice. I want to tie this up by saying those two things, when you think about the entrepreneur mindset, those two things are the core elements for everything else. Because you have like resiliency, you have self-sufficiency, all these other parts of the equation that help you really get there. But if you don't have the proper motivation,
Yeah.
and then in the proper vision,
Yeah.
and then for me, little milestones in the process.
I think everyone needs that, because you're going to have the wind knocked out of you at some point. So having something that can get you over those tough situations and remind you that there's still a light at the end of the tunnel, that's so important.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. There's this quote, and I'm trying to remember who says it, and I can't, but it's like most entrepreneurs, like most failed business owners or failed businesses, it's not because their idea was bad or the business was bad. It's because they couldn't hold out long enough. It's because people quit.
And honestly, me and you, if we're gonna be fully honest, there's been like 2 times that we really had conversations like, what's our exit strategy? Should we even be doing this? Like, F this. We can go get another side gig.
Oh my gosh, I could have been making way more money for way longer.
I don't know about that.
No, like I'm talking the first few years of my career.
Okay.
100%. I could have been making so much more money and had a lot more security. And that's the thing, that's the decision that most entrepreneurs have to make. That risky choice of betting on yourself for the long term.
You think about it like this, like when I opened the barbershop, I went $120,000 upside down, you know what I'm saying? And that was the biggest gamble to my point in my career that I've done. Anybody call me crazy because
You quit a 6-figure paying job to go into something that had no security. And you went into debt.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's not even like I went into that. I kept going into that as the years continue.
Yeah.
To buying time until I really figure out the formula to make it profitable. You know what I'm saying?
So if you don't have, like you said, to your point, the growth mindset and the vision, along with the other things it takes, you're not going to be able to get across the finish line.
You know what I wish they add to this entrepreneur mindset that is not on the table that I think we should really think about? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to put it on the screen, this little chart. It's the aspect of collaboration when it comes to building your team. Yeah, you can have the strongest mindset as an entrepreneur.
As an individual,
but it's only going to take you that so far. The hardest part for me, and Emma calls me a lone wolf sometimes, or is it a lone ranger, something you
lone
call
wolf,
lone wolf, is the fact that calibration could look differently for everybody. For me, it's really hard to do sometimes, but it's absolutely necessary if I want to achieve my final goal of making a family house, generational wealth from me, my mom, my kids, all that stuff.
It's the same for me. I also think I qualify as a lone wolf. I'm a perfectionist at the end of the day. I want to do everything. I know that I I know to the level of work that I want things to be done. And it can be so hard to let other people take the reins. And it has taken me a long time to realize that if you don't give them the opportunity, they will learn, you will never see your dreams really come true. And the best thing is when you hire a team and then you
Or
realize
partner up with a team.
and they're able to perform at a higher level than you ever could.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize I've suddenly elevated our presence.
Because at the end of the day, you self-recognize that you're weak in certain areas. You're very strong in certain areas. I think when you think about the mindset, self-reflection should be one too. Is like I'm self-aware enough to know I am a very strong learner. I'm taking myself as I can learn stuff really quickly, apply really quickly, make a lot of fast changes. But what's the negative side of all those three? I create a lot of wakes. I leave the team sometimes high and dry when it's like, hey, I thought we were doing this. No, there's bad communication aspects there. You know what I'm saying? So I understand like having a person like Casey, which we'll mention a lot in this podcast, when she has no fear in herself telling me don't know how to do something. She goes like, hey, we actually have, if we want to accomplish this, we need to do A, B, and C, which is the organizing. She knows how to communicate between the different parties. Like my weaknesses, she are her strengths.
Yeah,
Creating
complement each other.
Complement each other, creating those bridges. You know what I'm saying?
No, completely.
So to recap, right, in my perspective for the entrepreneur mindset, two biggest pillars should be growth mentality and self-motivation. But I don't think we should limit it to any particular category. I think it's a journey in life.
And I don't think it's something that you are necessarily born with. I don't think you're like, cool, I didn't have these things, so I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. It's you have to mold and really dedicate yourself to those things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to take this seriously, you just have to understand the dedication that it's going to take.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's all we've done in the last couple of years. I'm really, really good of like, I'm self-motivated. Like I'm really self-motivated and really eager to jump. And you're really self-motivated in the sense like you take that, analyze something, break it apart, learn how to make it better. And then we have taken those two skills, but then we had to learn so many other skills. And I feel like 50% of the job is just self-research and self-education.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for watching. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, like, and of course, share with your friends if you want to see more of this kind of content. Also, don't forget to comment below. Is there anything in particular you feel like we missed or that really makes for a good entrepreneur? Catch us next time.
See ya.
Bye.